Earlier this week, you may have seen that I spoke with Dr. Eithan Haim, a physician who was threatened with prosecution by the Justice Department after he blew the whistle on illegal sex change operations and procedures being performed on children at a Texas hospital. Dr. Haim is yet another whistleblower targeted by the federal government for speaking out against abuses of power, in this case, by the transgender lobby. I should set up our interview today by referencing the fact that there are some new developments regarding this story. Lawyers who represent Dr. Haim now have sent a letter to two influential committee chairmen on the House side of Congress, including Jim Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee and the Weaponization of Government Committee, about what they maintain is the government's overreach in seeking out to prosecute or make a target of Dr. Haim. What are your general observations about this?
Well, I think, at face value, it's just absurd. Dr. Haim, he blew the whistle on something. I mean, the Texas hospital had publicly stated they were not doing these procedures, and they were. So he was doing a public service. The government should have picked up that announcement and not be prosecuting the person who did. He's protecting the patients, the children, the young people in that region. It's just absurd, but I don't think it's surprising. We've been watching government overreach and the weaponization of the judiciary and the political process now for far too long.
Let's talk about the spiritual angle of this, because I think in the long term, that's what's really much more important here. How should people of faith address this issue?
Well, that's an important question. I think it starts with recognizing there's age-appropriate behavior. We seem to be struggling with this just in general. The reading material we want to present to children, there's this urgency to sexualize our children. And now we're giving them permission to make decisions at a point in their lives where we recognize they don't yet have the maturity to make the kind of decisions that would shape your future in an unalterable way. We don't give driver's license to 10 or 11-year-olds. We don't sell alcohol to minors. There's reasons for all of those decisions. And we seem to be confused on this, whether it's our desire to let our children have experiences more quickly. I'm not really here to diagnose this. I'm just telling you the pattern we're in and the momentum of it is taking us to some very destructive places. Gender is not confusing. If you are confused about your biological sex, there are some deep, significant problems that need to be dealt with, and a surgeon's scalpel is not the way to do it.
Absolutely. And I've read that there are real practical effects of this kind of pre-sexualization of children, in the sense that young girls, I've read, are reaching puberty in many cases at much earlier ages than they were in the past, as if the mere exposure to sexualized material advances that whole physiological process. That's deeply disturbing.
It is, and to have those decisions being pushed further and further away from our family unit. I understand there's a lot of pressure, ideological pressure against this notion of a nuclear family, but there's still overwhelming evidence, just indisputable evidence that the best possible opportunity for a child is to grow up in the home with their biological parents. And so our pressure on that family unit to push these decisions further and further away from them, to teachers' unions, to government purview, to hospitals, to school counselors, to whomever, it's absurd. And we're going to have to come back to the value of our families as the fundamental building block of the world in which we live. There's no question about that. I understand it's under tremendous pressure, and the church is equivocated, and we've been afraid of offending someone, and all of us come in one way or another from broken families. There is no perfect family, but in spite of all of the frailty and the weakness and the dysfunction, it's still the best thing available to us, and we should strive for what's best for the children amongst us and not succumb to expediency. Some of the adults are going to have to be willing to give up our adolescence and start to take on the responsibilities of being adults and think about others before we think about ourselves and stop just living for self-gratification. All of those are very fundamental biblical principles, and I believe the church has got to come back to talking about them.
And I think lost in the back and forth over this oftentimes is the reality that childhood is just such a precious time, and what makes it so precious is the innocence, the pure innocence
Absolutely.
of children and of childhood. And why on earth would anybody want to subject kids or make them aware of adult sexual behavior. It's damaging to children, and I think that infuriates me. But it's almost as if nowadays that if you suggest that kind of thing, you're the bandit, you're the culprit for even suggesting it, because you're offending somebody who believes in raising their children as a gay parent, or as a transgender child, or entertaining the idea of making that transition. So it's just so flawed, it seems to me. And I don't know where we went wrong, but it seems to be a gradual process that brought us to where we are today.
Well, when you find yourself in a hole, the first rule is stop digging. And if we have veered off a path, let's have the courage to go back and say marriage between a man and a woman is a good thing, that God created us male and female, that the ideal for our children is to grow up in those homes with their biological parents. We may not always live up to those ideals, but we will strive for them. You can label us however you need to label us, but that has proven to be the best way for human beings to flourish. And I'm not apologetic for that. And if you are preying on children, sexualizing, taking away the innocence of children, if you are physically mutilating them, or encouraging the mutilation of them, or protecting the mutilation of them, you're evil. I don't care where you sit or how many letters you have at the end of your name. I'm waiting for the AMA or the American Board of Pediatrics or the American College of Surgeons. The medical community needs to stand up. I'm proud of Dr. Haim for what he's done. And I'm looking for some pastors, for some leaders, from people in the scientific community to help protect our children. This is our generation. We will not abandon them to people with evil intent.